This is going to be a somewhat different interview than what I've done in the past. Helina, as you know, and I know, you were anxious to have students understand something about tone and how tone works in the novel that they're reading about Buddy. And you discovered when you gave them the first exercise last week to select a passage from the chapter 7, was it, or chapter 6?
Chapter 6. Yes.
Chapter 6. And to select a passage written in one tone and then write it in another tone. About half your students, I think you said, could get that, and the other half was pretty mystifying. So maybe you could begin by telling me what you decided to do in the interim, because today's lesson was, to me, quite an exciting new approach to the same topic. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So though I had modeled it for them last time, it was the lesson before you arrived that we did it together again as a class with the quote from the book.
Right.
They still, a lot of them weren't quite grasping it, so we went back and we practiced identifying tone and identifying the words that create that tone. So I actually had sentences written. There's like 5 or 6 sentences, plus a couple we did together. And I used names of the students in the sentences, like Nicole like cat, so I included Nicole found a kitten, sort of thing.
Oh, yes,
and
right.
Each sentence had a specific tone with them. So their job was to highlight in their document which words were tone words, and like identify what the tone was, and then what clued them in that was the tone.
Right.
So if somebody said like, "Oh, I'm so happy to be here," and then like, "Oh, okay, the tone's obviously happiness." If somebody like growled or scowled or whatever, oh, they're probably very grumpy. So we practiced identifying the words that clue us into the tone, and then the next class was we practiced identifying the tones of the actual book itself, like, oh, Bud is feeling this, Bud is feeling that. So you can tell because of these words. So today was actually the first time I had them writing up together, even a little bit, since the last lesson you were here for.
Right,
So.
right. And today's lesson was, just to explain to people who are seeing this videotape without not having the advantage that we have of knowing the larger sequence of lessons, today's lessons did not focus on Bud, not Buddy. So maybe you could talk a little about why you made that decision to depart, go away from the novel, and to look at a different way, actually, of having students come to an understanding of tone and the importance of different aspects that contributed to a reader's understanding of tone.
One of the things we did talk about briefly the other day was narration, and how in a first-person narration is the character who's talking, therefore it's the character's tone, and third person it's going to be the narrator's tone. The way we explained it was the narrator's kind of hiding behind the character in the first person. So I wanted them to, a few of them were having trouble understanding, who's talking, whose tone is this, the character or the author or whose? Right. So I was trying to show them a different aspect. Like, it's not just Bud talking anymore. Now it's, in this case, it was a third-person narrator. We had them talk about they had the little scene of the man getting a package, and they had to write it themselves. So it was just to show them a different aspect, a different narration. And in this case, it was a little easier for them because I think it is. It wasn't a character talking about how much he liked this or didn't like this. It was start with a totally neutral tone that they could then add on to, rather than having a preset tone. Right. The big challenge will be the preset tone that they have to change. Right.
What was interesting to me about the lesson, from that very perspective, was that rather than associating tone in you might say a simple and straightforward way, tone is the tone of voice by which you speak, or the tone that Buddy speaks in a given setting. This one sort of came at that understanding of tone, but came at it in a way almost more from setting than from tone of voice, because after all, you set up the scene. The man is receiving a package. How are you going to use your vocabulary to help convey to the reader what the tone of that reception is, even perhaps without even putting words into the mouths of the person delivering the package or the man receiving the package?
Yeah, that's actually the last practice we did with the sentences. It was students speaking, or the sentence of the student speaking. Yes. So those were all tone of voice. Of what is the character saying? How does the character feel? Right. And this time I did want them to get, okay, now what does the author feel? What does the narrator feel?
Right, right.
So I was.
So what you're talking about is the author as the sort of magician behind the scenes.
Yes, it's the author voice. Yeah. So what does the author feel?
One question that I had that you'll hear me I'll tell you when we go over my observational notes, is oftentimes when a reader comes to a certain point in a novel, the reader brings quite a large body of background knowledge, particularly since you just finished chapter 8 in Bud Not Buddy. So we have quite a bit of background knowledge prior to that, so that sometimes it doesn't take a lot for the author to convey the tone of a scene because we're bringing that background knowledge. How are you building that understanding of the background knowledge that a reader brings to let's say their speculation about the tone in which a different character speaks, or the tone in which a certain setting is conveyed?
They actually haven't gotten to that yet. Because that, I think, ties in more with character development.
Interesting.
So I'm just going to introduce the idea of character development and then kind of tie that together with tone. How, now that we know how this character is doing, how he's changed, how you've related to him, now that you see this scene again or see this sentence, given what you know about him and how he feels, how does he feel in that scene?
Right.
Like there's been touches of that with way back in chapter 3, I believe. There's like the bully kid and he makes bulls dance.
Oh yes, I was there.
So there's a touch of that there. How is Bud feeling this? How's Bud feeling that? But right now, this series of lessons, the past couple, I just wanted to step away from a preset narrator, preset feeling already, and understand the basic concept of tone, and then go back in, just dive back in with the character and how he's feeling.
Got it, right. And if you had to describe what you might call your endpoint goal for the study of tone, the study of character, as they are, as they, you might say, come out of the shared experience of reading Bud Not Buddy, how would you describe what your fondest hopes are for your sixth graders?
My fondest hopes?
Yes,
This may sound
by the time
selfish.
they finish, right.
This is going to sound very selfish, but I want them to know the difference and feel comfortable enough with the difference to be able to define it to somebody else. Because even in my college English classes, I've met people who can't tell the difference between mood and tone.
Yes.
And I see adults struggling with tone. And I'm like, we have to stop that. But no, it's one of those things that it will serve them. I know in high school they do a lot of it, and in college we did do a lot of it, which just made the absence of it more glaring. People didn't know how to work it.
Right.
And here we like to connect things to, just beyond school as well as like to the real world, how they can use it there.
Right.
And I know for a fact there's several students right now who are planning on either writing for television or they want to become writers themselves.
Right.
And in which case, yes, they need to know tone.
Yeah.
So
the other sort of sad but interesting part of that very enterprise that you're engaged in is, as you probably know, the incidence of autism is a lot higher in the South Bay than it is elsewhere in the country. We're not sure why. Could be better diagnosis. But anyway, we do know that the number of students generally diagnosed in the upper elementary and middle school year with autism is higher. And we know that one of the characteristics of autism is that, the trouble identifying, the tone in which someone else is speaking, or just understanding the setting, you might say, in which something is said.
I know in this class there's only 2 ELOs,
Yes.
but in the other class I have some more. I know that they too have trouble identifying tone sometimes. Sarcasm is very difficult.
Right.
So we haven't we touched a little bit. I think a couple of kids had the sarcasm card today.
Right.
But we'll probably touch on that more too next time.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And then my final question is, what did you see going well in the lesson yesterday, the lesson today, and hopefully the lesson tomorrow that you'll want to keep in mind as you plan your curriculum for the final weeks of the fall semester?
What really helped, I think, this time and last time is the group work aspect. Before I used to have them let them all use their laptops, so they'd have a shared document, but they'd just be doing their own thing. This time I did make them pick a scribe. They had to close the other laptops. They all had to gather around.
Yes.
So I actually think that helped a lot because both this lesson and the last lesson went really, really well with that.
Yeah.
There's only 2 outliers, and I had to talk with them today about
Right.
They've had a history of this before.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
So I think that's what sent it over. I tried to keep it engaging, again, including the kids' names in the previous sentence. And
Right.
this time, like, trying to get everybody included and adding their notes to
Right.
change. But I think it was the group that did it.
Yeah. And that should be very helpful with PACT, of course, because one of the strong parts of PACT is that videotape, video clip too, where you're working with different groups. And of course, when groups are working together, you really want them to be working together rather than working with you individually. Great, Helena. Well, that's great. That will conclude our interview for this one. Thank you very much.